You're listening to the Woman of Value podcast. You are about to hear the story of a woman who is following her dreams and passions and creating positive change in the world.
My hope is really for a woman to step into their calling with full courage and to live a life so authentic and so powerful and so aligned for them.
Destinee Berman is the strategist and secret visionary behind today's most widely recognized online spiritual healing schools. After a successful 15-year run in Silicon Valley, she found her calling helping healers and holistic businesses multiply their reach and impact by launching profitable online schools and platforms. Welcome to the podcast, Destinee.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. You shared a little before the show about some aha moment that you had, a moment when you realized that you needed to make a change and claim your value. So can you share that moment with us?
So yes, I would say it's been a series of moments building up to a big aha and to the big moment. And for me, there were a lot of pieces going on at work and where I was at. And one day I literally was looking at the option to move up with where I was at in terms of getting a promotion and really stepping away and finally making the leap to do my own thing, even though I didn't quite know what that was. And it was after years of exploration and really diving into what's my passion, what makes me so most happy and most fulfilled. And there was a moment where I literally looked at myself and I didn't feel any energy in the direction that I was headed, even if externally it felt successful and it felt safe. And so while I didn't have a plan, I felt the energy was pulling me a different way. And that was when I knew that if I kept giving life in this other direction that had no more life and no more energy for me, it wasn't going to work out, no matter how safe and no matter how trusted it felt.
I think that, this is a common theme that I'm finding with women who stepped into this other space, that when you're really in touch with who you are, you know when the energy has to shift. You know when you're feeling so uncomfortable with where you are, you don't have all the pieces to get to where you're going. And
Yes.
I think a lot of people think everything has to line up first. You have to have all the pieces in place, all the ducks in a row. So what gave you the ability to make that leap without knowing where you were going?
Well, I had a couple of things going for me. One, we were in a good financial situation because we've been prudent with our finances and I had a good foundation to build off on. Two, my husband, who is really truly, he's my rock. He was not only 100% supportive, he's always had strong career and strong work in place. And he gave me the freedom and the space to explore and to take risks. And he continues to do so today. He and I work very well together in that he's big company, solid in that way, whereas I am more the entrepreneurial maven where I want to go and take risk and make these jumps. And so between the foundation we already had in place, I've been doing well in my career for a long time, and we've gotten our finances and lifestyle to a certain place. And with his support, it allowed me to finally make that leap. Now, I was still really scared and terrified because I didn't have a plan. And I was essentially going from making all this money to negative, right? So it wasn't to say that I wasn't scared, but in terms of the reasoning of the mind, right? I told myself, well, if this didn't work out, I can always go back in 6-8 months and get another job and do even better than what I was doing. And I knew that was the case. Like, that wasn't just wishful thinking. So just being able to tell myself those truths allowed me to make that leap into the unknown.
So having some safety net,
Yes,
knowing you had your support system and you had the foundation of having the funding as well.
Yes.
And I remember when I left my marriage and I didn't yet have a career in coaching, but I was in coaching school. I had other skills and did like 5 other jobs until I left those jobs and focused only on coaching. But I didn't want to be a statistic. I didn't want to be like one of those people who graduated coaching school and couldn't make it as a coach. And so I think when you have that drive and you have a foundation somewhere, it really helps you but
Absolutely.
you don't need all the pieces.
That's exactly right. And the truth is, it's impossible, I believe, to have all the pieces, right? Because your plan is going to shift so many times.
Yes.
Yes,
And you have to have the fortitude to go with the flow of the plan.
absolutely.
So, do you have experience from your past of having gone with the flow and, watching the success that happens?
Typically, I would say my biggest leaps in my career every time I jump to a new company where I've got a bigger role, a bigger promotion, so to speak, has always been really relying on that intuitive leap because when you're moving from a new from the same company you've been with to a new one, you're working with different teams, you're coming in to manage teams. You don't really know how that's going to turn out. And I've made transition leaps where I'm moving into a new market or into a new, completely new product, say so from online media to software sales. And I've always relied on that leap. So it's not always knowing what I was getting myself into, but intuitively it was the right move. And it
Mm.
was the right next move, I should say.
It's so the intuition is a big piece of this.
Yes, yes. And I rely heavily on intuition in my day-to-day work now.
So tell us a little bit about that because I think a lot of people bypass their intuition and don't trust their intuition. And in my work as a dating coach, I have seen a lot of women confuse intuition with triggers or past pain.
Yes.
And it's important to distinguish between the two. So if you can give us some words of wisdom as to how you know it's your intuition, how you know you can trust it. Where do you feel it? What's going on in you?
Yes. So, one, this is a learned skill. So, while intuition is innate to all of us, learning how to listen to it and learning how to separate it from wounds versus a deep knowing, that's a learned skill. So, that's number one, and to know to expect that. Number two, I do use a system of astrology and also just my own checks and balances. So, for me, I know that my intuition communicates to me through a really deep gut sense. And that's how I can tell. Whereas for some folks, they get images, they get visualizations. Some people even hear words. So over time, I've been testing this for a long time where I'll get this inner knowing and then I'll check. And you can check it and experiment with this with like smaller examples. So maybe you're just trying to decide between what to have for lunch. And you can practice with yourself with your intuition in that way and practice how your intuition communicates to you. So that's one piece. Then on the other piece, I believe it's always worthwhile to do long-term, in-depth awareness on yourself. So I've been seeing my therapist for a long time, and she helps me identify my wounds and my healing so that in that moment I can separate between the two.
It's multi-process.
Yes, yes.
And people do feel intuition in different ways. Sometimes it's a dream. I had somebody on my other podcast who woke up from a dream about a guitar playing guy, and he ended up making a movie about it. He had never made a movie. He had never acted. But his intuition was so strong that he knew this thing had to come to light. And so it's fascinating to hear when people are tuned in, what happens, what's possible.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us, what is a woman of value like you creating in the world today?
Well, I've it's funny because my husband's always he's always teasing me about how many ideas and how many creative projects I would ideally love to have going all at once, but it's not always possible. So I would say in terms of work, there's my school. I have a online platform and a program called Launch Your Calling where I work with healing professionals and transformational experts to get the work online and to really launch their online schools and programs. So that's something that I've really been focused on expanding and birthing. I also work quite intimately one-on-one with healers and astrologers and yoga teachers to birth their online offerings, and that's really fun as well. I have a son who is 2.5,
Mm.
and so he taps into my creativity in other ways and really growing and learning how to become a whole woman and to be a mom and be a business owner. And I don't know if that's as much of a creative act, but he's teaching me on a daily basis how to really ride all the different worlds.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you bring in your son because I think as a parent of 3 children, who are now grown adults, the act of seeing the world through a child's eyes and helping you to stay present is so helpful in becoming a whole woman, because we often get so caught up in the busyness of our lives and we fail to see the beauty of life and just take the time to breathe. And that's where a lot of creativity happens. It's in the quiet times. And so I hear you're a woman full of creative ideas, full of bursting ideas. I mean, I can relate. I'm a highly creative person who has been an artist and a musician and a screenwriter, director. I mean, I've done so many different types of creative projects. So I totally get it. Like, it's hard to just kind of focus on one. It's like having a favorite child. So how do you sort through that plethora of creativity?
Well, and this is where I believe that the business and looking at numbers really helps, because it helps me prioritize in terms of, okay, so this is what I want to create right now. This is a new program idea or a new offering. Where does it sit within my strategic plan for the year? And where is it really grounded and anchored in? So that's step number one. And then step number two, I check in with my intuition. Is there something here for me to follow and pursue? Or is this more of a fun idea that potentially could be a distraction from the bigger plan in place for this year? And usually it's always a balance between the two, because, we can't always work in a step-by-step way. That's not really where some of the magic and the manifestation comes in. And at the same time, we need to ground our ideas as they come in. I capture everything just to make sure, and then it gets slotted accordingly based on the working plan we have in place.
Yeah, you got to balance the practical with the magical.
Yes, exactly.
I also noticed that you use the word birthing a lot. And I love that term, because it really is as if you're giving birth to these projects, to these programs. And people have called it being a midwife to connect you to the rest of the people that you serve. So I love that terminology. It's also very feminine. It's really tapping into yourself as a feminine CEO. Just bring your whole self. And I find one of the things that's frustrating for me as I launch into the Woman of Value movement is watching how many women who rise up to the top lose their femininity. They feel they have to become like men and lose the ability to their magic, which is relational skills and warmth and nurturing and things that come naturally to us. And it actually makes them, to me, leaders that are not as effective. They are off-putting to many people. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, a couple of things. It's interesting. We're living in times where the paradigm is shifting, right? And so I can understand that, in the old paradigm, or in the shifting old paradigm, in order to rise, we're working within a different structure. And so we believe that we have to be like men to be in the man's world and to succeed. And I absolutely can see that from multiple perspectives, having worked at companies and whatnot. At the same time, we lose our essence, which is exactly what you're saying, because we're compromising the essence of who we are while we're doing that. And at the same time, we're struggling with trying to fulfill our ambitions and trying to be a woman. So I can see how it's been really difficult for women, especially on the rise and having ambitions and trying to live in this modern world. Now, right now, it feels like the world is going through a shift, and where it's going to go, right, it's hard to say. But with the next layer of the women's movement rising in terms of being able to have her voice and to lead and to rise and to be a woman in the process, right? It's interesting to see where this is going to go. And my hope is that we get to be ourselves as women, creating a paradigm where both men get to lead in their strengths and we get to lead in our strengths, and this world comes integrated together. So we're not playing in the man's world and we're not playing in a woman's world. I mean, we need both roles.
I couldn't agree more. I think that it's true for women and men. It's true for introverts and extroverts. I think we need the balance of yin and yang.
Yes.
in our world, in our lives, and especially at work. And so the conversation really has to be more broad about
Yes.
women and men, and all of us understanding each other and working together in ways that work.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
love that. All right, let's talk about the future. So, what is your vision for the future? We want to understand where you're headed and your dream for yourself and for others.
So this is all still evolving, but I can say that in terms of my dream for others, I feel like this is pretty evolved at this point. Is that my intention and my hope is really for every woman and for every man. It just so happens I'm working with women right now in most capacities to really see what their calling is and to really get what their mission is and have the courage to step into their calling. It could be a full-time mom, it could be a full-time CEO, whatever your calling is and whatever is prompting you to step into that and to be able to give away the stories of, oh, if I take on a healing profession, I can't make that much money, or I'm not good enough to do this. And so I see all these stories emerge. And my hope is really for a woman to step into their calling with full courage and to live a life so authentic and so powerful and so aligned for them. And I guess on the flip side, that's also my wish for myself, in terms of having work and impacting millions of people. That's really my hope. A lot of my creative vision around this is still emerging and evolving at this time, but I really do believe, and that's probably why I've called my program Launcher Calling, is really I really believe in each one of us doing what we're here to do in the deepest, truest sense.
I so resonate with you. I mean, this is where I'm stepping into right now, and because I played small so much of my life and didn't step into my potential. And one of my close friends said to me as I was divorcing that I was living such a small percentage of my potential.
Mm,
And it really struck me. This was one of my pivotal ahas, like,
mm,
oh, I am. And because I didn't have the belief that I could go for something big, it was scary. And it is scary, but it's also exciting. So how do you help people distinguish the difference between a real fear and a fear that helps them step into their calling?
that's such a great question. Well, there's a couple of things. So one, I always tell people that when the fear comes up, that's not a bad thing. Especially if you're looking to build an online business, you're going to all this new technology into this new space. Of course, fears are going to come up. It feels unfamiliar and it feels strange. And we all generally don't like to lean into feeling strange and uncomfortable. So, one, just because a fear comes up doesn't mean that's a bad thing. And two, I swear my therapist tells me this in every single session or any coach I work with. But the more we're willing to be with that fear, the more we're willing to really feel through it, but to really face that fear, the more we will be able to discern and exercise that muscle. Is this a real fear, or is this really tapping into really old karmic wounds, old traumas that is informing my next step? Now, on the other side of that, I also teach women that it's really important to develop the muscle and that practice. And I do this through meditation of really of opening up your capacities to deal with fear. So it's not just a clearing fear, it's the facing that fear and and having that muscle to feel that emotion. And then you'll move through on the other side where you wake up. Literally, it's like waking up from a dream and seeing, oh, okay, there's some truth to this, or I'm just really working through my old trauma. And the more you practice this on a daily or weekly basis, depending on how intense you're pushing yourself, the more this will feel familiar and, again, a practice.
So many people get held back by the fear.
Exactly. And to know to expect it. Just because the fear comes up, we think we're in the wrong direction. And something I get often from my students is that, well, I believe that if I'm in the flow, then these things won't come up. And the opposite is true. If you're moving in the right direction, the flow will come if you're getting out of the own way. And the only way you're going to get out of the own way is to move through that discomfort and that fear and see what's really going on. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not run away, but move towards it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting also with communication. Like people are afraid of confrontation. That's
Mm,
another thing that's coming up for me, and I see people running away from it. They don't want to have the conversations that are scary, but that will actually get them to be closer with somebody, to bridge gaps, to find intimacy. Those are the scary conversations, but what's on the other side of them is deliciousness, right? So
mm.
and also just peace, because so many people live with all of these thoughts in their heads that run around and don't
Yes,
get
yes.
resolved because they're not talking. So in so many levels, we have to face the things that scare us.
Yes, absolutely. So true. And well
Yeah.
said.
Well, it is time for the lightning round now. And this is where I'm going to ask you some quick questions. And we want to get some little nuggets and just find out where you are on these topics. So are
Uh,
you ready?
yes, yes.
Okay, awesome. What was the number one thing holding you back from becoming a woman of value?
I would say the deepest thing is probably the belief in myself. And this is something that's an ongoing cultivation, but believing that I can do this and believing that I'm so much bigger than how I was relating to myself.
What is something that you failed at that taught you an important life lesson?
Well, so many things. But I would say that when I was exploring what businesses to go into, one of the businesses that I explored was actually making these premium eyelashes, false lashes. And it was something that seemed so different from what I was doing. And I was trying really hard to convince myself. And then I realized after I had developed the prototypes that this wasn't, I was just trying to convince myself and put myself into this shape that wasn't really me because I desperately wanted my own business so badly. And so it taught me, well, one, how much I really wanted to be an entrepreneur and to be working for myself. And two, that when I am working against myself and just trying to convince myself so hard, it was never going to be fully aligned. And then why am I doing that? So it was actually, this was before I made the leap and started working for myself truly. And that was a really great lesson and exercise to go through.
It's important to go through these moments of failure or mistakes or going down the wrong path, really, because that's how we find out how to refine our path.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So true.
I would love to know the best advice that you can give a woman who has given up her value in the past and she wants to become a woman of value.
Number one is to know that your value, your intrinsic inherent value is always there. So even if it feels like it's so far away from you and you need to get it back, on one hand, that's true because you need to uncover your way back to yourself. But the good news is that your intrinsic value exists as it is, and you already have it. So that's a good news. And to know that you can absolutely get it back no matter how far you seem away from it. And then I guess an action step more tied to that philosophy is being willing to stop and to meet you with where you're at, with that love and with that holding of the space, and that's the first step.
Do you have any tools to help women to really easily access that highest part of themselves?
I recommend a daily meditation practice, and it can be truly any kind of meditation that resonates for you. Apps like Insight Timer has a million different meditations available, or you're sitting just in silence. But starting with some space to access spirit and starting with space to access soul is very important. And even if it feels like it's only 5 minutes a day, if you're able to pull that into a consistent practice, it will help create more of that softness in that space for you to tap into what's next for you.
There comes the meditation again.
Yes, you
Get
can't.
quiet.
Yes, yes. It's just hard to skip it, right? No matter what form it takes.
Yeah, yeah. But it is important to be able to have something to pull yourself back to center
Yes,
because I find that the inner critic is so strong and people believe the voice of the critic. They think that's the truth. And
yes.
so working on that and trying to get people out of that bad mindset is so much of the work. Do you have
Mm.
any books that you can recommend that have been helpful to you on your journey?
So many. The one that comes to mind right now is the one by Marianne Williamson, The Law of Divine Compensation. It's a beautiful book. I've read it many times, and I find that very useful when I just need a little bit more of a spiritual approach and perspective to money, because we can just get so lost in it. And I've had to heal a lot of my money stories over the years, and still in process of doing so. If you ask my therapist, so that's been a very useful book for me.
We all have money stories. I'm just starting to work with a new client, and boy, her money story, oh my God, I'm just got to go back to childhood and start unpacking.
Yes, 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 yes. A lot to unpack for many
Yeah,
of us, right?
I think most of us, even if we grew up around money, I knew people who were very wealthy who raised their kids to be responsible around money. And I gave them so much credit because their kids could have easily grown up not having any responsibility, not really understanding how you get money, how you
Hmm.
spend money. And I think wherever we're coming from, we all have to work through all these stories we have that we have made up and made into the truth.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
and
yes.
often they limit us greatly.
So true. Yes, so true. Hmm.
What is your favorite woman of value quote?
Well, it's funny. I'm not a big quote person, but when I was reflecting on this, I would say there was a quote that I saw at a conference last year by Jay Shetty. So I guess not by a woman, but he said that a dream is really having a plan against your vision. And I just love that because so many of us have dreams and so many of us have these big creative visions, but we still need a plan against it. And the Capricorn in me just loves that, right? Because I love to dream big and I love to have all these big, wild ideas. And then what's the actionable plan we want to put against that dream?
And I keep hearing in you the balance of the right brain and the left brain, that you have both the analytical and the creative, which is such a nice combination. A lot of people are extremely in one direction or the other, but you have a nice balance of both. And that's lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So here is our last question, and this is a big one. How would you like to be remembered?
That is a big one. I would like to be remembered as the woman who is a model of fullness. And I mean whole, being a whole being in terms of a woman, a wife, a mom, a entrepreneur that was really living things out to its fullest extent. Um, and so I'm not sure if I want to use the word potential, because it's always around, it's hard to really know what your max potential is, but like really living out my life to the fullest extent as an integrated whole being and being a model for other women to choose that I can be a business owner and I can be a mom and I can be a wife and I can have a full life living out each of its essence.
And like I just said before, you already are doing all those things. And um, this question to me is so interesting, because I find that for the most part, people don't talk about any accomplishments. Like I want to write a book. I want people to read it. It's always about character traits,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the kindness and the fullness. And it's really that is a beautiful thing, because it's who you are today and who you are as you continue to grow into your fullness. Really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you.
So, Destiny, do you have a gift that you want to offer our audience, and let us know how our audience can reach you?
Yes, so the best way to do this is to go to my website, and I do have free content on there that if you put in your email address, you will get the free content. I have a couple of great things out right now. I've got a free class. I have a free guide that can take you on how to bring your work online, if that's a good fit for you. So my website is destineeberman.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Des Berman. And if you ever want to reach out one-on-one to me there, that's a great platform.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today, for being such a great role model for who a woman of value is. You're living it, you're teaching it, you're spreading the woman of value movement out into the world. And I wish you the best of luck as you continue.
Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful and sweet conversation. So thank
Oh,
you.
I loved it. Thank you.
If you would like to step more fully into your value, grab a free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Woman of Value on my website, thewomanofvalue.com. Just click the link at the top of the homepage. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to click the subscribe button in your listening app. And if there's something in this episode that inspired you, please share it with others, because the more we share these inspirational stories, the more women of value we will have in this world. I'll see you next time.